And hello, everyone. This is the WoDCast episode 14. We are going to talk about, as anyone should expect, they just wrapped up all the demos and all the footage and media was released for Bloodlines 2 at E3. So we're going to basically talk about that, deep dive into that, talk about our impressions, what we liked, our concerns, and hopefully you'll find that interesting and insightful. I got a bit of a panel with me today. This is your host Harlequin, aka Peter. I am joined by Joker, who you should recognize as on the Neo Knights Boston Chronicle, as well as a new co-host Ruby, and of course we are joined once again by Wizen. Welcome, folks.
Welcome.
As everyone's just like, is he talking to me? Yes, I am talking to you, you silly, silly people. So let's start. Let's start with you, Joker. What? Let's talk about overall on the macro level first. Overall impressions. What was the one thing you really liked? What you saw in all the footage and what was discussed, and what was the one thing that made you raise an eyebrow and is a point of concern for you?
I think the one thing that I liked from what I saw is the way that the thin blood disciplines are used for moving around the map. We only really saw nebulation being used through by going through vents, and I think that's a really interesting. I didn't really care for it at first, but I think it's a really cool power now that I've seen it. The one thing that I'm concerned about is the sort of the animations and how the game looks in that regard. Like the in the combat when you're fighting, your character will I don't know how it works, but your character seems to just like do a flip, and it does absolutely nothing but make you turn your back towards your opponent. And it not only that, not only is it useless, it looks terrible in my opinion. Like I hate that animation, that flip.
that like that Matrix third person, which pans out the third
Yeah,
person. That flip, you talk about that flip that they showed many times in many of the demos.
yeah,
That's the
it's like
flip you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, it looks like like you're going to flip over your opponent, but you just end up like in front of them with your back turned towards them, and it's just terrible. I think the other times where you go through to third person, they were also kind of lame. Like in the demo, when you go to climb a wall, and you go to first person and you go back to you go to third person when you climb, and you go back to first person when you reach the top of the wall.
Right.
I think that sort of the way they use the camera there, it's very disorienting. And
I will say, in fairness to their defense, that's basically how Deus Ex does it for the most part.
yeah,
Very similar. Very similar.
I just think it's very odd the way they do it. But that's sort of my only real concern. I mean, I'm a little miffed by how melee combat looks. I thought it was going to be it was going to feel more impactful,
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, I mean that was the reason they supposedly made it only first person, so combat would feel more impactful. And right now, I'm not really seeing it. Maybe that will change in the future.
Right. I mean, and just let's keep in mind this is pre-alpha or alpha gameplay. A lot can change in the next year, clearly.
Yes.
Ruby, welcome to the WoDCast. How are you? Ruby? Okay. Wizen, let's go to you, Wizen.
Okay, I think those flips are probably just glitchy right now. I've seen them work sometimes, other times they don't.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they'll work on that later. It could be. I think what I've seen it work sometimes where you flip over and you get behind your opponent. And that's the way it's supposed to work. Like you're going to attack them from behind. And sometimes it's just glitched out, like you said, where it looks like you turn yourself around instead of getting behind your opponent.
Right.
Sorry. My Blue Yeti fucked up. as it would.
All right. We'll get to you in a second, Ruby. Go ahead, Wizen.
As for what I think of the combat, I mean, they also had gunplay where the bullets miss, so it's definitely glitchy. The impact with melee, I think, is also just going to be something to work on. It was clearly glitchy, but the way the quests are set up, the way you explore, that was very Bloodlines.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You go out, find where you're supposed to go, talk to more NPCs, that than having multiple solutions to solve. I think the Thin Blood players, we saw Nebulation, and some of the videos we saw Chiropteran, and they also saw Mentalism and some, so they showed off all of them.
Oh, they did.
They only showed the movement power for Nebulism, but I'm sure Glide will allow you to more easily climb vertically, and Mentalism will just allow you to open locked doors. So there was a locked door you could clearly, they kept showing in the demo. In one of the wide open areas, there was a locked door and you couldn't go through it. You had to find some other way. I think with Mentalism, you might be able to open that locked door.
Right.
And just go straight through. And apparently you might be able to dominate an NPC and make them open the door. So
right.
It was very reminiscent of Dishonored, where you have multiple ways to get through every area.
Right. Overall, I agree. Ruby, what did you, as a whole, what did you like about the demos they showed?
Well, personally, I did like how it was. It did give off the same feel as Bloodlines 1 to me. It did. I think it worked in the sort of campiness of it, like Bloodlines 1 had. It doesn't seem to be taking itself too seriously. The gameplay, I agree with what Joker said. I think about the animations.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like even though it is pre-alpha, so I keep that in mind, I think the fact that they stick to the same animation over and over again, instead of punting, this is how some games do it, like multiple different animations that they can switch between to give it like more of an authentic feel instead of like, the same thing over and over again. It's just like execute the same animation over and over again. But other than that, it seems pretty, good so far, especially from what it has to live up to. Because let's be honest, the gameplay in Bloodlines 1 wasn't great.
No, I mean, and I don't think anyone would say that it had the best combat mechanics in the world. Far from it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I played through it like a Bloodlines 1 in the past month or so, like a few times, sort of getting the feel for it. And the way the progression of the quests go, it's hard to explain, but the sort of like you're a messenger, I think they still have that, right? Like the elders pushing you about.
Oh, right.
Go and do this dirty work for us. Go and do this dirty work for us. And then you start getting embroiled up. It seems like they're going through the same path as Bloodlines 1 did.
Right. And they kind of have to, really. I mean, you got to start out as basically a nobody. And in fact, I believe in one of the interviews they even said that because you start out as a thin blood, you're basically even lower on the totem pole than your Bloodlines 1 character started out at. At least at your Bloodlines 1 character, you were a full-blooded vampire right from the get-go. And here, you're even less than that. And so you even got to work a little harder even to work your way up the ladder.
Yeah.
So
The funniest thing as well, though, is it looks like, well, even if it might not be true, it feels like the Thin Bloods are way more powerful than your first character in Bloodlines 1.
yeah, let's go back. Let's go back to you, Joker. What do you feel about these? Some people are claiming they're OP. How powerful as a thin blood you are, because some of the it might have just been trying to show off. This is just to show off because it's a demo. They're trying to show all these different features, and clearly the character they were playing had a mix of disciplines from various clans. They were leaping from the third floor patio all the way down to the street level. They were showing all this stuff, but the general impression I'm getting is Thin Bloods are going to be much more OP than they were in the first game or the more classic Vampire the Masquerade rules. What's your impression on that?
I think that's sort of a half truth. I mean, the Thin Bloods are definitely more powerful in B5 and in the game, but I think that's a good thing, because in a video game you want to be powerful, right? You don't want to be getting your ass kicked every time you go into combat. But the developers have said that the Thin Bloods are not as powerful as one might think, because you can't stay as a Thin Blood if you want to survive what they'll be throwing at you. Right? So while I do think that the Thin Bloods have... the Thin Bloods are definitely more powerful, and I think that's a good thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it'll be interesting to see how powerful you become when you become a full-blooded vampire, and what exactly those things that they're going to be throwing at you are that you wouldn't be able to survive as a Thin Blood. But I don't see the problem with Thin Bloods being powerful in the game. I think it's fine.
Fair enough. Wizen, what's your thoughts on that topic?
I mean, if you started the beginning of Bloodlines 1 with the Blood Boil ability, you'd look pretty powerful too. So I think I think the progression paths, and one of the demos did show Blood Boil off. So
oh yeah, absolutely.
Path. Disciplines. I think the Thin Bloods will have the same experience requirements to climb up the tree as the full clan disciplines. So I think you won't be starting with like the Corruptor and surround yourself with bats, because not only is that the second active power, but it's also one of the higher slot powers. I think if you put it in a higher slot, those might not unlock until you're at a higher level. So we don't know what the balancing of this game will be, but I think the quest that they showed in the demo is from the beginning of the game, while you're still a Thin Blood, and that you won't have all these powers.
Mm-hmm.
So,
now, in defense, I will say several people were saying the AI didn't seem that bright. Not only in the combat AI, but also just the AI of the NPCs walking about. I will say, in defense, generally speaking, most game development, pathfinding, and AI is usually the last things to get more than bare bones treatment. So,
to be fair, that AI is more complicated than people think.
Oh, absolutely. That too. That's a very valid point. Absolutely. People do not realize how complicated AI can be. I've been acquaintances with many game developers in the PC world,
Pathfinding has been
90s.
an issue since the 90s, since video game
Oh,
age.
yeah,
Pathfinding
absolutely.
has never been solved. It's
No,
always an
no,
issue.
exactly.
Oh, one thing I want to mention quick before other people join it. The one thing they really got well is the look of the city.
Indeed. Yeah,
I think it looks beautiful and it has an atmosphere. It's dark, so there's a little bit. It's bright, but I'm sure we're gonna, you go through the area where the homeless are. It looks run down. The city nightlife where the club is looks vibrant. It looks very good.
No,
Yeah, I
absolutely.
think
Yeah, go ahead, Joker.
the areas where it's supposed to be bright, it looks bright. Where it's supposed to be dark, it's dark. What I was going to say about the AI is that it definitely is in a very early stage of development.
Absolutely.
Because you look at the gameplay trailer where they're fighting in the abandoned building, the enemies there's they don't even have models for the enemies yet. Like they just took like random ass pedestrians from the street and gave them guns. They don't even they don't even have like lines. They were all repeating the same line with the same voice and everything.
Right. Yeah, I mean, clearly there's clearly placeholder assets in this demo. There clearly is, and that's why I'm not. When someone says, "Oh, this, I don't like the look of this," or the animations are a little clunky here, or the AI doesn't seem that, it seems the AI is pretty dumb. All that stuff, I'm not worried about. I mean, they have a year to replace the placeholders, to polish it, to add to it. So yeah, stuff like that. I mean, yes, some of that stuff it's certainly worthwhile to mention, but at this stage, it's not a real concern of mine because they have plenty of time to work on it. Now, if we were 2 months before release.
Yes,
and it was still like this, then I would definitely start having then I would be very, very worried.
Let's have Ruby talk. I think Ruby wants to talk.
I was going to go to Ruby next. What's your thoughts on this, Ruby?
Why, thank you. Well, I was just going to say, like, if Sonic can get a whole new redesign within that time, I feel like Bloodlines 2 has plenty of time to redo any character models they want.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean,
yeah. All right, Sarka.
Animations and character models don't they're not easy to make, and they're not, I suppose, cheap to make, but they don't take a very long time. So I mean, they could really just replace most of what we saw in like a week or two. So I wouldn't be worried.
Could take more time than people realize with animations, especially because what you want to do to speed up time is have animations you could replicate over multiple models rather than making a unique animation for every model.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they just reused the same mesh, like, for multiple, like, the same body type throughout a couple of models with just a different skin over it.
Put a different skin, but you look, their body type is the same, but the skin is different, their face is different, but it's really the same person being used over and over again. And that's so they could speed up animation, because actually the modeling itself is not the difficult part, it's the animation that takes the time.
Right. And just to put everything into context to anyone who's listening, of how difficult and how resource intensive something like this is. I used to, back in the day, I ran NWN2.net. It was a news site for the then announced and in development Neverwinter Nights 2 news. And one thing people were clamoring for is we want horses and we want mounted combat. And they were, just beating up on the developers. And so during one of my interviews with them, I asked them, I was like, what's the status of putting in horseback riding and mounted combat? and he's very honest with me. This was at this time it was the executive producer Ferret Bolden, and I asked him, I was like, "What's going on?" He goes, "I'll tell you what, Peter. We actually did. We saw the request, the people asking for this. Doesn't sound like it's that complicated. It really, I know it doesn't sound, but we did a cost analysis of what it would include to put it in this game, and it would cost $1 million between the art assets, the animation, and the programming time. It would cost about $1 million, and Atari, who was a publisher at the time, just didn't want to fork up that extra amount of money for something they felt that was a luxury, not a necessity for the game.
People always underestimate how much those animations cost.
Yeah.
They are the most expensive part of a game.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like anyone who plays World of Warcraft knows that for sure. Like, with the amount of things Blizzard gets requested to them for, like, say, like, updates for old character models. Like, I know a couple of races in WoW have been like at the same character model for about like 4-5 years now, and they're just now updating it. So like the time it does take to update something to the standard that the audience is looking for, it's not just like, oh, we'll just casually update this. Like, especially in like Vampire's Legacy, like they have to get a very specific tone out of it that isn't, like the previous game was very like early 2000s gothic, and they have to get that same feel out of it without just copying 2003 gothic. And that factors into the like the whole dancing thing. That I bet how much stress that actually caused within the development team.
The first thing they showed off, so clearly they're well aware of what the fandom talks about.
Yeah,
but it's like,
and they got hammered on that dancing scene. Everyone was hammering on them, and I think that was the intent. I think that was they're like, we're gonna make the most cringe-worthy dance scene. We're gonna put it in the trailer just to screw with the fan base, and it worked. We took the bait. People were all up in arms about it. It was hilarious.
But
newer people were up in arms about it. The fans of the old game loved it.
Oh no, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I thought it was hilarious. I thought this is exactly how I dance in real life. This is awesome.
But I think that's pretty funny. Like it's like, for us, it's just like it's a pretty funny dance, but probably like back at HQ, it's like, oh, Jesus Christ, I wonder if they're gonna like the dance models. Is it similar enough to Bloodlines 1? I wonder how much money that single dance scene cost.
Yeah, well, with all the animations, as we were saying, it probably wasn't, again, animations just isn't cheap as a whole.
For time's sake, I do want to move on to the actual quests that we saw.
Yes, let's finish off.
Talk about there.
Yeah, let's finish off the conversation about the quests. What's your thoughts?
Start off just the interesting reveal, and what I'm personally excited about is the nature of the quest giver, and how we learned that she is indeed Tremere.
Tremere, yep.
Which means she's House Tremere. The subtle hints that she have of that necklace she had with the pyramid.
Yep.
And that actually goes back not just from Clan Tremere, but back to their mage house days, where they would all wear the particular type of mage that they had all wear occult symbols, just like that. What do you call it? Geometric occult symbols.
Right.
So that was actually really fitting, and some people from guessed that she was Clan Tremere before we saw evidence of it. So that was really cool that you could guess that just from her appearance. And I like that she's atypical. She's not like Strauss, where you're like, oh yeah, that's a cliche Tremere, the way he's dressed and everything. And the fact that you meet him in the Chantry. Here, you meet her on top of a modern dance club. And the way she's slightly flirty to you, she talks to you. She doesn't seem like the way an elder talks down to a neonate, which Strauss had. She may be not much older than you.
Right. I don't
Or
think.
she just-
So. I don't. Out of all the elders, I don't think Strauss was that condescending to you. In all fairness.
He wasn't condescending, but there was a formality to the way.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Oh no.
It's just the way your boss at work could talk to you, and he's being nice to you, but there's a formality to it that's
right.
Because he's your boss.
A line you don't cross. Absolutely.
If your boss could blow you up.
Yeah. Yeah. But hey, Strauss gave me the nicest apartment in the game, so I gotta defend the guy.
Yeah, I was very surprised when I did my first Premiere playthrough. That apartment is...
It's the nicest one in the game. It's the nicest. It's better than what the Prince fucking gives you, dude. Come on.
It's also interesting. That's another thing because we see the apartment at the very beginning of the demo.
We do see it. Yeah,
we start out, and are we going to get more apartments just like in Bloodlines? But depending on what fraction we get, that could be a way to I can't pronounce the word I'm trying to say, to make the clans feel different.
Right. Individual.
I can't pronounce. Yeah, make them individual. So add replay value if they had a different haven.
Yeah. Yeah, if that is your haven, that actually it did look really nice. It looked very cool.
Yeah, it's a big ass apartment.
It was big, really big.
I think the most notable thing out of it, we heard the news anchor voice.
Oh yes, same, and that is Brian Misota, the writer, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the? Yeah, he's
that's
voicing the newscaster in this one too. I think that's hilarious.
Yeah, he's voicing a lot of characters. He was Slug too.
Yeah. I was gonna say he was a Nosferatu too. Yep.
I don't know if that's him, but some of the female enemies would shout in a male voice, and it sounds like it's Brian. I don't know if it's just that was
playing a trick. People picked up on that. They just think it was the wrong voice file attached to the wrong NPC kind of thing.
At this point, they should just make Brian voice the entire.
That would be hilarious.
I'd be totally okay with that, to be honest.
Think about it. He wrote the dialogue for Jeanette. What happened if he voiced Jeanette?
Oh my god. Oh my god. The internet would implode. That is what would exactly happen. All right, guys. So that's really all I wanted to cover today. I just want to, get some thoughts, things that stuck out to you.
One last point would
Go
be,
ahead.
I liked also the option she had was Slugger and just the dialogue.
The dialogue options were amazing. Absolutely. And
deal with let's see, you could make a deal with the Nosferatu to save Slugger. You could spare his life even without that deal. You could kill him and get the data. You could not get the data. You had all these ramifications for even completing a mission. You might end up pleasing different factions, even if you complete or fail them. So that was cool. And also the fact, the best line was where you walked into the people who were like fleecing the homeless there.
Mm-hmm.
Those gangbangers, and you could talk to them, and one of the lines to it was to threaten them and say, "I'm a fucking vampire and I'll rip your heart out," stuff like that. That was great.
I feel that would be a masquerade breach.
It's only a masquerade breach if any of them live.
That's true too.
Yeah,
That's true.
I liked how old school the dialogue options were. It wasn't like this whole chat wheel, or it's very just basic, like options on top of each other.
Yep.
I like you could read the whole line.
Yep.
In this case, more is less. Sorry, less is more.
It'll be interesting to see how they implement your background choices into the dialogue in those situations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's going to be interesting. And you did see some skill tests too. You saw like parentheses persuasion, parentheses intimidate on some of the things. So your skills. I really do want to see what your character sheet looks like. That'll tell us a lot.
Oh yeah.
We do have one detail on backgrounds, is that's the police officer. If you pick that, you can go to the police station. Normally, other characters will have to go behind like a secret entrance to get into the police station. You can, as if you have police officer as your background, walk through the main door, and you might meet someone who knows you.
Yeah.
Your way through that.
I love
Yeah,
that.
I wonder what the professional basket weaving background will.
Well, that
You
was
get
one
more
of,
dialogue.
that was one of my favorite points in Bloodlines 1 was meeting someone from your past. I'm really glad they're like, going to expand upon that with this one. The turmoil of your old life versus your new one.
Yeah, that'll be interesting too.
Yeah.
That was a lot of people's favorite moment. So,
Yeah. All right, guys.
did you play Bloodlines before, or was it new to you?
I actually played it back when I was like 6 or something like that. It got me very early into the sort of. I played Bloodlines and it got me into goth music. So I've actually been into Bloodlines without even knowing it was an RPG for the longest time.
Nice.
And then I finally looked it up and started scouring through the wiki, and that's what got me into the RPG.
Slippery slope to goth music. I know multiple people who got into goth music from the game.
Yeah, no, they had some great goth songs. Great goth songs.
It had a great soundtrack.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. So let's wrap it up, guys. That is our initial impressions for this WoDCast. We will, of course, be back next week. Hopefully, there'll be some new news. If there is, we'll have a WoDCast. And with that, thank you, Joker, Ruby, and Wizen. And with that, we will talk to you next time.